Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. I always loved how RPGs and open world games in general usually have some sort of reputation system that can affect the player in various ways. It's one of those features which are important for creating a believable world because NPCs tend to treat you differently depending on your actions. Even if you played at least one RPG in your life, there's a big chance you experienced something similar to this. Phrases like fame, karma, disposition, respect and reputation are usually used to describe this feature, but the reputation is probably the most common. The first action RPG that introduced this feature was Xanadu Dragon's Lair 2 back in 1985. This game had a karma stat which affected the gameplay quite a bit. Every enemy was classified as good or bad, so when you kill a lot of good enemies, your karma stat will go up. This would prevent you from entering the final dungeon of the game or even leveling up your character. It didn't make any sense whatsoever, but there you go. Besides the karma system, Dragon's Lair 2 introduced a couple of more revolutionary features that shaped all future games in this subgenre. Real-time action combat with RPG elements like character statistics, individual experience for equipped items, equipment that change character visible appearance, and so on. That was worth mentioning, but let's get back to the topic. When talking about karma in games, I'm guessing that most people will think of Fallout series. What's really interesting about the first Fallout game, karma was named as general reputation. It was renamed to karma in Fallout 2 and it stayed like that until Fallout 4. I would prefer the original description because in my opinion it makes more sense. Fallout New Vegas had put more emphasis on the actual reputation system rather than karma. Because of this, your reputation with factions in the Wasteland had a lot of impact on the gameplay. In fact, the whole main quest was based around major factions. Aside from people treating you differently based on your fame, the reputation system was one of the reasons for the great sense of freedom in this game. Not just in terms of exploration of course, but the freedom of choice when progressing through the story. You're free to try and figure out which faction suits you the best for whatever the reason. I think this is one of the best approaches to world building in open world RPGs, especially when it directly affects some core elements of the gameplay. This is exactly why I think that Gothic III had a great reputation system. Gothic III had a reputation system that heavily affected the gameplay for better or for worse, depending on who you ask. But it makes a lot of sense when you take into consideration how it's presented to the player. We're going to break down every element of this system because despite a couple of flaws that we're going to mention later, I think this is one of the best ways to implement a reputation system. It's far from perfect, but it has a lot of potential, especially if someone could take the same formula and work on it. Gothic 3 is built around its reputation system. Pretty much every other aspect of this game is implemented in a way to support that design decision. You got this huge open world with 3 major zones full of cities, villages and hidden outposts. The game keeps track of 6 different reputations, but only 3 of them are major. This means that you can finish the game in 3 different ways depending on who you choose to work with, but there are many possible combinations of choices before you decide. 3 major game-changing decisions are more than enough, but it goes much deeper than this. I will talk more about this later to avoid any confusion. Aside from the beginning of the game, where you have to fight the orcs, the game will never force you to work for a faction. What's so great about this, you can go wherever you want and complete every quest you find. However, the game expects you to logically think about certain quests. For example, let's say you take a quest from some orc who tells you to go and destroy a rebel outpost or any similar quest related to their opposing faction. It's logical to expect that you will gain some reputation with orcs, right? But the game never tells you that once you gain some reputation with any of these factions, you can never lose it. This might give you an impression that you don't have any repercussions for working with all factions, but that's far from the truth. For example, if you decide to liberate 3 or more cities from orcs in Mortana, orcs from other cities in this zone will be hostile to you after you talk to the leader. This pretty much works the same for the rebels and Hashishins. Once you destroy 3 rebel camps or 3 Hashishin cities, they will turn hostile as well. This is not directly tied to the reputation system, the game just keeps track of how many cities and outposts you liberated. If you somehow manage to do this early on, which is highly unlikely, you would miss a lot of quests and reputation gains from those places. And again, the game expects you to think logically about the quest you're doing. One wrong move could completely change your outlook on this game, but Gothic 3 allows you to do as you wish as long as you understand that some of your actions will have a great impact on the world. Actually, even if you don't understand, it's the same thing.
You're not exactly the brightest light, are you?
You need torches, Mora?
Never mind.
The game never actually explains how all of this works, which makes it really easy to get confused as a new player. Besides the reputation with factions, every place which is marked on the map has a reputation value. A large majority of these places have some locked areas. In order to access those areas, you would need to raise your reputation within that place.
You didn't mean to just walk past me, did you? This is the residence of Varric the Great. Rarely is a Mora tolerated in the inner circle of this castle.
The only way to get reputation for cities or factions is to do quests. Once you do enough quests and get at least 75 reputation within the city, you will unlock those locked areas and gain some more benefits. NPCs won't see you as a stranger anymore, and you can even provoke fights without risking to get attacked by everyone like before. That is, until you kill someone. The highest reputation for each place in the game is 100. You could max out your reputation in every town, but it's highly unlikely that you'll manage to do this in your first playthrough. But 75 reputation is all you need for everyone in the town to trust you. Reputation can also be seen as a measurement to what extent you have completed the major tasks in an area or for a faction. You can usually talk to the leader of the place once you reach that threshold of 75 reputation, and more than often he'll have a major task for you. But as we said before, if you don't want to make any big moves with a faction, you can choose to ignore those quests and just move on to another place. There are no quest marks and no hand holding in general. I'm pretty sure that almost every NPC is killable in the game, so there's always a risk of losing quests, rewards and reputation. They could die by the player's hand, or they could be killed by a creature or some other NPC in a provoked or unprovoked fight. Your main quest in the beginning sounds really simple, but you get little to no explanation about it. You're supposed to find Zardos the Dark Mage, and that's it. Now, if you played Gothic 2 or Gothic 1, you know everything about this guy. But if you didn't, you will have very limited info about him. I get why someone could have a lot of problems with this kind of approach to storytelling in games, but I think this highly encourages exploration and player freedom in every sense of the word. After you start your journey, there's a big chance you'll forget that you even have the main quest until you stumble upon some NPC with the option to ask about Zardos. And more than often, their statements about the Dark Mage are pretty vague.
What do you know about Zardos?
No more than everyone else does. He's in cahoots with the orcs, or so they say. If you want to find out more, try their shamans. The only problem is getting them to talk to a human in the first place.
Quests that involve picking up items and killing named NPCs can be completed without even talking to the quest giver. I always thought that this is great because it makes the world more believable, but this quest design is not without its issues. Some quests are hidden under dialogue options with NPCs, some can be done only in a particular sequence, and so on. In the end, a large majority of quests will give you a certain amount of town or faction reputation. Besides new areas, important NPCs and quests that you unlock with high reputation, you can also unlock faction related gear. If you want to buy some decent armor, you would need a reputation with that particular faction. This is one more thing that just makes sense to me. Why would someone sell you their high quality faction related gear if they don't trust you enough, especially in the time of war? You could play the game for a very long time, explore and do every quest you can find in the world. However, if you wish, you can pick a faction early on in the game and stick to it. But even then, you'll have a lot of time to change your mind if you end up not liking the faction. And this is the part where it gets really interesting. There are 3 gods in this universe and each faction is worshipping one of them. Depending on your reputation and various factions and NPCs being alive, you'll be able to choose one of them. I avoided talking about this in the beginning because it could get really confusing. Anyway, rebels, orcs and Hashishins are the most important factions in the game. Orcs and Hashishins worship the same god, Beliar. Rebels are worshipping Enos, and Adanos is the god of balance and he is mainly worshipped by the water mages, rangers and druids. This certainly adds a lot of depth to the reputation system and the game in general. We said before that there are 3 ways of finishing the game, but with a lot of variations. The thing is, nothing will stop you from betraying your faction or playing as a double agent. There are actually 5 different paths that you can take before you finish your playthrough. As you can see here, you could mix it up quite a bit. Even if you start worshipping Enos, for example, nothing is stopping you from killing rebels. And that's just one of the examples. This here is what the game is all about. It's amazing how the whole game can just adapt to almost every situation that the player came up with. While it can definitely have some inconsistencies, I never actually managed to break it completely. Although I'm not saying that this cannot be done. So even though there are 3 different ways of finishing the game, it's much deeper than that, as you could see. Even something crazy like killing everyone that you meet is possible, if you can pull it off. Or you could try to influence everyone with diplomacy and respect and avoid confrontation. While there are some slight inconsistencies with this reputation system, it's still really good. The game did a poor job of explaining all of this, but I have to confess that one part of me likes that. It's entirely up to the player to discover all the possible options. I always thought that RPGs are all about the player choice and freedom, the 2 things that this game did extremely well. To summarize, the reputation system and your approach to quest solving are the most important things in this game. The more reputation you earn from working with factions in the game will give you more benefits like unlocking new areas, NPCs, skills, abilities, unique items, and more quests. You can never decrease your reputation value with a faction, but you can completely stop your further gain of reputation with a certain faction you pissed off by doing some world-changing quests. Your influence in the world could be entirely diplomatic, aggressive, or the mix of 2. And no matter how you choose to play, the game will just adapt to the choices you make. This wouldn't be so mind-blowing if there weren't so many options and choices that you can make. And that would be it, I guess. I really tried to keep this simple and easy to understand. Tell me your opinion about this, do you agree or disagree? And what game had a great reputation system in your opinion? Leave a comment down below. I also have to give a shout out to Elusive Creator, the author of Gothic III The Definitive Walkthrough. It was my source for a couple of things from this video, because there was no way I could remember all the little details from the game. It's a great guide with ton of information, and I'll leave the link in the description if you want to check it out. If you like this video, make sure you press the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. I make discussions about various RPG topics, but I also do guides, news and reviews. Special thanks to my lovely Patreons and YouTube exclusive members, and if you as well want to become one of them, all the links are in the description. Patreon is definitely the best place to support if you like what I'm doing here. And I'll see you in the next one.